So this talk is about generative AI and moving behind the chat user interface. I'm actually the co-founder of Fusion Quill, and Fusion Quill is a platform for UX widgets and workflows. And if you guys are interested, you can take a look at the website later. I've been working 32 years in the industry, and I think the last time I was excited was when the iPhone came out. And now I'm again excited because AI enables a whole new class of applications, and I'll talk about it. I like to tell people that if you have used a Wells Fargo ATM, I created the software kind of thing, but sometimes people come back and say that it ate my card or something. That turns out very embarrassing. LLMs, and I define it in the next slide. But LLMs are large language models and they are neural nets, and we'll need to kind of understand that because this is the basis of understanding AI kind of thing. But I'll keep this talk not at a math level of this, but just at a conceptual level so that people can get for my application developer what they are exactly. So before we go there, I think neural networks have been around since the 1970s. I think ELIZA was the first one, and then you had a whole bunch. And the turning point came here, which was a Google paper called Transformers. Attention is all you get, this thing. And basically that—
Attention is all you need.
All you need, thank you. That was a turning point because it let people create really large neural networks. And there was this company called OpenAI, and Ilya, who was one of the chief scientists, they got, and Ilya was working on deep learning earlier. And he came up with this concept that if you have a lot of data, which the internet is providing, and if you have a big enough neural network, it can produce wonderful things kind of thing. And that kind of jump-started the whole ChatGPT revolution kind of thing. And OpenAI basically solved the whole problem of making it popular by putting a chat UI in front of a model which was trained on a huge model which was trained on this thing. And I think Microsoft had to build like an AI supercomputer for that to happen. And they also then fine-tune it with chat-style questions and responses, because if you ever use a raw model, which is not this thing, your answer, it'll not answer you in a question answer format. And we'll talk about that later. So this is, I think, one of the most important slides on this thing. How do large language models work? And there's a lot of math in neural networks and all. But essentially what I want you to guys get, it actually just does one thing. You give it some text and it predicts the next word. Technically it's called a token, but we'll just go with word. And here the text is the boy went to the, and depending on how the model was trained with what training data you have, in this case, the playground is the highest probability kind of thing. So when you basically, if you call this thing and say the boy went to, it will return playground. If it was trained differently, it would return some different thing. But this is, I think, the basis of this thing. You're basically giving it a string of text or tokens, and you get the next word. That's it. That's what LLM do. Everything else is software which is happening behind the scenes. Any questions on that? And by the way, I'll take questions later, but if you all have any questions when I'm doing the slide, let me know. Just raise up your hand.
How much data goes into, just for the people to get to the scale?
Well, it depends on the model. For ChatGPT, I think they have not released exact, but it was probably the entire internet. Terabytes and terabytes of data. Whatever data they could find out, they trained it on.
500 terabytes.
Yeah. So so basically all the models right now mainly use the transformer architecture. There are some other new architectures coming, but so far the transformer architecture is the one which is running ChatGPT, Llama, Gemini, and every other, most of the other models which are popular. So this slide came from NVIDIA, and basically that what can they do, and the thing is that depending on what data you basically send in and train what they call a foundation model, you can do various tasks on it. And people kind of like, oh, but if it's just doing next word prediction, how can I do a task like translate into Spanish? And the way it does it is that you have to first of all have a model which is trained on English, trained on Spanish, and also trained on like English to Spanish dictionary and Spanish to English dictionaries. And what happens is that when it sees its prompt, it predicts the next word, SO, and then it predicts the rest of the words kind of thing. So it's actually, it's not really translating it anything kind of this thing. It's basically predicting that based on this text, what is the next thing that the user expects, and based on the training. And I think this is a very important concept, like, to understand, because every time when you say that it's asking, when you ask it a question like what is the capital of France, it returns Paris. That's because that was in the training data, that you have basically said that if this kind of question comes about, what is the capital, you return the capital city of that. So, and that's what it's doing. Like all the models, ChatGPT, the Claude, Gemini, and all of them do the same thing. Everything else, when you see the question answering, the chat interface and all, is actually all software. It is not anything to do with the neural net kind of. Neural net is just predicting the next one. Good.
So the prediction is clear, but what about the translation here for a cat is assumption that cat is masculine. Spanish basically is a gender-based language. What if you say this is a ship? Ship in Spanish is a feminine noun. So it wouldn't be eso, it would be esa. Where does that information come in?
In the training data. So depending how you train the data, and this is one thing which the AI models are that if there's bias in the training data, then you'll have issues with your answers kind of thing. And that's been a problem kind of thing. And you must have heard when they try to overcorrect bias, they have a whole different set of problems. So, but the main thing is that the model doesn't exist on its own. There's a lot of training and millions of dollars actually went into the ChatGPT thing kind of thing. And the reason why nobody can compete with them is that only Google and Facebook and Microsoft have money to kind of build a model with that amount of training data and that amount of that size with this multi-GPU that is needed kind of thing, which is one reason the NVIDIA stock price is so high, because most of the training is done on NVIDIA's GPUs.
Pardon me with one more question. I was trying to get to the point where is the gender concept stored?
I think I can help with that a little. I think that the way how the model was trained is positional. So it understands not just the meaning of the word, but the position with other words. And so it's not just the next word. It's the context of all the words that came before it, and also it looks at what's going to come after it, and it adjusts to that. So there is a lot of knowledge in it, actually. So
yeah, it's not choosing the next word.
It doesn't have the concept of gender.
No, it doesn't have the concept.
it does.
That's what I wrote.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's right. As the position of the word matters, kind of thing. It's putting words which are grammatically, the sentence is grammatically correct, so it has to figure out what is the right word to put there. But it doesn't have a concept of grammar either. It's just the neural network, basically, depending on the training data, how the thing was trained. Like if you train it with really bad data, it will really put words with spelling mistakes and other things, and grammatical mistakes. So one reason why ChatGPT was the fastest growing application is that OpenAI at that point of time, they were thinking like, we need an application to make our models popular, and it's better we build one. And then they came up with this idea of chat, because chat is like a universal. People use it for instant messaging, they use it for customer support, they use it for enterprise, and they were pretty comfortable that if they would fine tune the model with more natural distinct question responses kind of thing, they would have a good chat model. And then they released the ChatGPT 3.5, which basically people who have used it, this is a UI kind of thing, where it was kind of trained not just on the origin model, but also in a question response fashion, which was fine tuned on that kind of thing. And this model has kind of, the chat model UI has kind of become very popular with AI, and even a lot of companies adopted the chat model, this thing. And it's not a bad model. I mean, from a UI perspective, it does a lot of stuff. People are familiar with it. Copilot for Office uses it. Bing Copilot uses it, and Google Gemini, and everybody is using a chat model. So what I want to talk about, like when you're developing an application, chat may be a good solution for you, but it also might not be a good solution for you. And that's where we kind of are talking of the limitations. So the first limitation comes from this thing called prompt engineering. You might have heard jobs requirement for prompt engineers and all. And if you use ChatGPT, you can say like, oh, summarize this set of paragraphs and it will provide a summary. But what people have found that if I use a really big prompt here, this thing, you get much better responses kind of thing, because you're telling it, it's like telling an assistant, right? Like, oh, go do this. But if you write like a story, you say, oh, complete this feature. But really nobody writes a story like that. They like acceptance criteria and all, which are very detailed things. And this is kind of like that. You're basically saying that, give me something with these kinds of acceptance criteria. And there's a whole bunch of stuff which goes into prompt engineering, but most people kind of don't do this, obviously. When you're using ChatGPT, you just say, summarize these paragraphs. And, but you might not get the best possible summary out of it kind of thing. So that's one problem. The next problem is there's a contextual challenge. Like if you have used the API, what you will find out that, I don't think it's very clear, but the entire transcript, let's say you and the AI have chatted like 30 times, and now your question is the 31st time. The whole 30 times, the whole transcript goes to the model every time. And that has a couple of issues. One is that these models are limited by context length. Now ChatGPT is better with the 4.0. It's I think 128K, but it's pretty much, there are times when if you keep chatting on the same chat conversation, you start talking nonsense kind of thing, and that's where the context length is this thing. And it's very apparent if you actually have written using the API, because then you manually have to send each and every of the whole chat transcript kind of thing. If you're using ChatGPT, then you're talking on one thing, don't switch it to another topic, because since the entire transcript is going, it's going to get confused with this thing. Now, the new models are much better than the ChatGPT 3.5, or if you have an open source model or you fine-tune a model, you'll have these issues kind of thing. The other thing, if you have used the API, you have to pay for the number of input tokens that you're sending it to it, and the number of tokens generated. So if you keep adding to your transcript, guess what? Your input tokens are getting higher and higher, and the model has to do a lot more work to kind of now process that information. So that's the second this thing. The third part is the real-time nature of chat, right? I mean, as a user, I type in something, just like an instant messenger, I expect a response immediately, and it at least should, and that's why they do streaming, so that you don't have to wait for the complete response. It really shows you is putting some text on the screen and you're okay with it. But that's very costly. Like anytime you do like an instant system or a real-time system, it's like trying to build an instant messaging infrastructure compared to email, where you can just send and forget and wait for a notification and then read the email. And so those things like batching of requests, where you can send multiple requests to the same model, becomes a lot more difficult. And the cost is, again, if you're going to send a whole transcript again, is magnified. So those are those are the reasons kind of thing. The last reason is that chat UIs, they support a linear flow of information. Like let's say you're chatting with something and then you change your mind on something, then there's a possibility, and depending, this is how smart the model is, it might get confused kind of thing. Like if you say that, oh, like in this case, it's like you're saying that I want to send $20 and then change an amount of money, or you change some other important parameter in that. There's a possibility, and I think this OpenAI has made it better, but if you use like a model in Hugging Face, for example, the smaller models, then you'll still have an issue with that. So the thing is like, and even if you're just a normal user of ChatGPT, anytime you want to change something, it's better to start a new chat session so that the model is not confused. And the new session always will work faster because it's sending less tokens over the wire. Now, one of the nice things, I think, where we started with DOS and Unix, which are all command line applications, but the problem in that is that people had to remember what the exact commands and exact syntax, and when we went to GUIs, it was point and click, where you select an object and then suggest an action. And this is, I think, the AI version of Photoshop. So in Photoshop, rather than kind of like if you use DALL-E, you just type in what you want and get the stuff. Photoshop does it one better. It's like it makes it part of the GUI application. So you can basically say like, oh, draw this thing and say put a red arrow sign there. So it's much more direct in this thing. So you have the concept of the direct manipulation UIs, and also the command prompts kind of thing that you can put. Any questions so far? So one of the things I think what we have been working on is like innovative UI approaches, and our goal is to put the user in the driver's seat kind of thing. So basically empower the user to kind of reduce their busy work and also to basically increase productivity. So that is the goal from the UI perspective. If you use ChatGPT, the mobile app, this is the mobile app. It uses speech to text to talk, and then text to speech to output stuff, and then here is the transcript kind of thing. The transcript is here. So the idea is here, it's still a form of chat, but you are actually now talking to it. So it feels a lot more natural, and OpenAI, I think, has done a lot of work to kind of make the voices sound natural. They've got the whisper speech recognition engine really good. So it does a good job of recognizing this thing. I mean, 10 years back, it was very difficult to recognize accents and stuff like that, but they have kind of solved that problem. So this is, if you're using a mobile app, I think the voice interfaces definitely help, and you guys should look at it, how to kind of support that, at least on the mobile device. On the PC, the problem with the voice speech recognition is that the quality of microphones in most laptops are really bad. So unless you have a headset, the Bluetooth headset, high quality one, it's probably not even worth trying to do it on PC. There are some small wins of like enhancing content. Like for example, because the LLM can generate so many things dynamically and text dynamically, like simple things to make the user happy, like you say different hello greetings kind of thing, right? And it's not something like a big feature, but people do like the fact that, hey, I want to make my experience from the user dynamic kind of thing. So you get that feeling that, oh, my app has a personality kind of thing. So like before LLMs, you could hard-code a list of strings, which is what game developers and RPG developers used to do. But here you can actually generate stuff on the fly to kind of do stuff. And it's a small thing. Yeah?
No, sorry, not watching this like previous slide, you were about the voice, sorry, the way
Oh, sorry.
But essentially, I don't know if you mentioned the quality of microphones and PCs are pretty bad. What about like VR headsets? Especially Apple Vision Pro, would that be a preferred method?
I would assume that since Apple does a good job with the iPhone headset, they would do a good job in the Vision Pro headset kind of thing. I do have a slide on VR, which I was thinking of taking it out because thankfully I kept it in. But this is like a low-hanging fruit, just to give your app some personality. It could be an enterprise app, could be a social media app or anything. It just makes the user happy when they are greeted kind of. So one of the things since with text completion is that it turns out that if you train it on code, which is what OpenAI did with it, they train it with a license from Microsoft, they train it on all the GitHub repositories. And it can actually, unfortunately I don't think you can see it, but if you kind of write a function name, it can kind of do code completion kind of thing. It's kind of like a smarter IntelliSense, where IntelliSense was doing just one object at a time, but here it can do like entire function at a time. So this is one thing which I feel that it fits well with the architecture of LLMs, and as long as you give it the context of your data, it can kind of complete stuff. Again, it depends on what you're trying to do. But I would suggest, like, if you're using some document writing kind of stuff, you basically provide suggestions like how Gmail's this thing. So the user can just tab and go and keep typing and filling up their document very fast kind of thing. I do notice, I think some medical software, but they don't use this thing, they use like some codes where you put in the codes and it'll expand and out. But the thing is that if you just start typing stuff, you can just think. Microsoft, if you're using ASP.NET or Blazor or something, like today they announced that smart components where they have a text area where as you start typing, it will fill up the rest of the text kind of thing. Again, this is like, if you have access to an LLM, again, it's not very difficult to do. And it basically, you can just enhance your UI controls by trying to fill up stuff automatically kind of thing. This is, we talked of prompt engineering and how it's very difficult for normal people kind of thing. So this is a screenshot of our application. It's the AI word processor. And what we do is that you select, like you type stuff in the word processor, you select stuff, and you can hit something like summarization, summarize, expand content. And the way it does it is that the prompt, which was that multi-paragraph prompt which you have seen earlier, it basically takes the selected text and basically applies the prompt on that. Again, this is standard graphical user interfaces thing where you do a selection and then you do operation. You basically use the menu or the toolbar or the ribbon button to tell you what operations and that. So we basically kind of have basically put like expand content and continue writing, change style, translate and all that. So I think one of our first demos was for a friend who was, we got him to sit on the computer and said like, he wanted to basically, he had a lot of interview feedback to write. And so he wrote just a rough notes, selected it, said expand content, and it wrote a fully nice, formatted, grammatically correct paragraph. So again, this is just a way to hide the prompt. And so ideally, you don't want to, whatever you're doing, whatever application you have, you don't want to ask the user to type in prompts. You just want to hide it between buttons, other UI elements, or whatever it is, so that the user is just concentrating on their workflow and not something else.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a question just a moment. This is excellent. I'm blown away by this because one of the main pushbacks I get is, I don't know what to do. Like, you tell me I can do anything. What do you mean by that? And this is like perfect. Just push this button. This is what you're going to do.
And this is how people are using Word right now, right? Or Excel or something like that. They do a selection and then they do like add all the rows or some operation they do kind of thing. And this way their user is not really interacting with AI per se and doesn't have to worry of all the prompts and the complexity of prompts. And you can basically then fine tune your prompt because the user is not entering it. The user is not going to say one line summarize kind of thing, but you can enter like your optimized prompt for these kinds of things. From enhancing existing applications, I think that is the most requested feedback. There are multiple ways to do it. Obviously, some of what I showed earlier. One way to do it when you don't have access or you don't want to touch and you have a web application, you don't want to touch that application, maybe the developer has left long back and nobody knows what's going on in the application. So here, what Microsoft has done in there, this is the Edge browser with Copilot. They open a tab in the browser and this is actually reading stuff, the DOM here. And basically they have like again, they have a chat interface, but you could put a command bar or other buttons here. And basically here, it's hard to read, but it's like kind of write an email for a particular person kind of thing. And the concept is that you put your application here, you put like a browser add-on, and you basically talk via the HTML DOM kind of thing. And this is assuming that for some reason you don't have access to a source code or you don't want to touch the source code. It's a really legacy web app that you this thing. The other way is to kind of, if you have applications like WordPress or some other, there has a plugin architecture like WordPress, you could write a plugin to basically rewrite the content for SEO kind of thing. Like if you use WordPress and you type your own thing, you could have a button there, rewrite for better SEO kind of thing. Again, Other thing, the integration stuff with what Microsoft has done with Office Copilot is much more deeper integration, where they are talking with this thing, and that's also a good alternative if you want to basically have some kind of interface where you can have prompts to with text kind of thing. It remains to be seen how many users will actually like that, because I personally feel that if I'm using Excel, I like to use the ribbon and this thing to figure out how to do stuff. But there are times when I could probably type some stuff in the chat, but worry is that do I know the right text to type in the chat, kind of thing. And I think I talked about how Photoshop uses a combination of what direct manipulation and this. So these are the various different ways to this thing. I would say that start with whichever one makes sense for your application, and if you really don't want to touch that application, then I think this, and it's a web app, then this kind of panel works very well, because then you can just modify the DOM and read and write from the DOM with a browser add-on or browser plugin. Any questions here?
So when you have that assistance, whatever, on the side, is that communicating with a model in real time? Every time you type a word or whatever, it basically sends a message in and you get something back?
Not
only
every.
when you have to say, okay, now go and do it.
No, so when you click enter here,
Oh, you click enter there, that makes
then you
it
basically send a
does it.
command kind of thing, and that's when it kind of will actually communicate with
Okay.
this thing.
I'd like to
So,
ask another
yeah.
question.
Right.
We're talking about AI, and the I here is intelligence.
Hmm.
So for me, like a human being, I could write something, and then I might want to invert the logic. And if it was positive, I'm replying, and then I want to invert the logic. That's something that a human being or intelligent being would do, okay? To understand what's written there, and we just say, okay, is that tool or tools like that can go to the model and say, oh, now give me the inverted logic of that thing.
Yeah, with ChatGPT 4.0, you could,
Can do
yeah, you
say,
can do
give
that.
me
You,
the invert the logic.
you type in a paragraph and say, give me the reverse of this thing. One thing I would want to say on this model
Let
kind
have
of
the
thing.
test.
Yeah. One thing I would say on this model, it's not the 3.5, which is the free one, might not do it. The $20 per one should do it. Here you have to communicate to the model kind of thing, and here, since it's a web app, your model has to be running somewhere. It could be running on OpenAI servers, and you're communicating to OpenAI this thing, or you have your custom model deployed on your backend servers and wherever your backend is. So you need that communication layer. So this application needs access to the internet if your model is not local on this thing. So there's one issue with privacy. If you're using OpenAI or any other remote model, API-based model, you're sending your data to them, and so you should just be aware.
Question, on this screen right here, are these your company's widgets, or are you showing us an example?
No, this is a Microsoft Edge browser with Copilot.
Okay, thank you.
The previous screen was mine.
Okay.
What is SEO? SEO, what is that?
Search engine optimization. That's is
Search
basi-
engine, yes, yes,
yeah.
okay, all right, I got it. For better search engine.
Can I ask
Okay.
you a question on this too? So this could be an Excel spreadsheet, and you just say, put a button here that does this, and it would.
Yes. Yeah, but the way this is, this has to be a web-based thing because it's communicating via the DOM.
Right.
This is a browser plugin.
But
Yeah.
you could have PowerPoint or Excel.
Excel, the Office 365, the web-based version. Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And you can have any application. You can have your custom web application which you have developed, and the developer has left, and you don't want to modify any of the code inside, but you just, let's say the application has a big box or something which you want to autofill with some way. So it's kind of gives a way to kind of bring legacy applications to life without actually modifying the legacy code. You don't want to basically figure out how will I modify a code which nobody has been using for maybe 3-4 years or something. If anybody has used Camingo, which is the Khan Academy thing, this is this is one chat which I really like, chat UI, because if you look here, it's asking the student to solve a problem, but the chat is in context. It's basically, it won't go outside of the the question which is trying to solve. And the student goes and enters some random stuff. It will basically tell them that you should not be doing this, and if you continue doing this, I'll email your parents, and it does email the parents. Yeah. So so basically this thing sounds like this thing, but one reason why it really works well is that you might have heard of some hallucinations where the model just makes up stuff. And that's the thing with probabilities, right? Basically, if it chooses a wrong token because of the probability, it will kind of just make up stuff. Like I've asked it questions on, hey, how do I use this API or do this thing? And it'll come up with an API which sounds very logical. Like the developer of the components should have actually done the thing, but that API doesn't exist. So when you actually type it into Visual Studio or anything, you see all those squiggly red lines and stuff like that. But by focusing this problem here on the hallucinations kind of thing, you also focus the user's task on hand. So you're kind of like this thing. And I think if you're writing a chatbot, that's kind of important. I think people might have heard of that Air Canada issue where somebody convinced the chatbot to sell them a ticket for $1, and Air Canada did not honor it, and that person sued, and then the judge sided with the person saying that if you're deploying a chatbot, you're responsible for all its actions. Kind of stuff like that. So I think that's one of the things when you're deploying apps, you need to, AI comes with a lot of good things, but there are some pitfalls like hallucinations and focusing the user and stuff like that. I think this thing. Like I think some people have deployed a chatbot without any guardrails, and then people started chatting it as like as an AI girlfriend. So make sure you don't do that. This is another stuff from a workflow standpoint. What this thing? I think workflows are really good for AI because the models actually are not that smart, at least right now. So having a workflow where you break up the small task into smaller tasks. And there are multiple people who do this. This is a screenshot from our app. But there's things like Comfy UI, LangGraph and all that lets you build AI workflows with LLM and agents. We'll talk about agents a little later. But this is, I don't know if it's probably hard to read, but here's a thing for writing a blog post. So you enter your subject and topic, and instead of what you would think if you go to ChatGPT and say, give me a blog post on a particular topic, that's what you would type in. But that turns out not to be the best way to actually get a good blog post. You actually have to ask the model to break up the subtopics, then you edit the subtopics, and then you get your draft blog post, and then you edit that, and then you ask it to rework all the data into a nice blog post. And then you ask the metadata, the tags, the description, the tweet to this thing. You could add LinkedIn post, the title of the blog post, and that goes to the final article. So you see that's something what might look very simple to do in ChatGPT. When I actually talked to one of these book writers who used to write technical books, he was like, ChatGPT is totally useless. I was like, but you can do stuff with it. And he was like, yes, but you cannot control the generation what you want. And you want control over every step of the way. And that's why we came up with like, how do you break up this thing where people just type and write me a blog post on this topic? And there are a lot of people doing that. And that's why you find the internet full with AI generated blog posts and all that, which actually make no sense. Like reading 1-2 paragraphs of it, you're like, why did Google even put this up in the SEO list, right? So you really, I think to get the most value of AI, and the way to think of it is like if you had a real assistant, right, a real person who's an intern or somebody, you would not go and tell him like, oh, write me a blog post on this topic. You would basically give him a step-by-step way where they would go, and then the person would come back and say, yeah, look, these are the subtopics, this is my first draft, and then you give them feedback, and it's an iterative process. So we try to bring up that iterative process in our workflow, and I do believe that this, rather than a chat, is going to be the future where you break down complex tasks, and even tasks which look simple for the AI to generate, but you break them down into smaller tasks. And this has one advantage, like I said from the chat transcript, you're sending less tokens and you're expecting less tokens out. So from a cost standpoint also it works out well. Let me talk of this multiple AI agents kind of thing. So there are times if you have used ChatGPT and asked it to do something, it'll write out something and you're like, this really sucks. Can you rewrite it? Now, that's one way of working. So when you have these multiple agents, they are kind of working together. So you have one agent, which is like a supervisor agent, which is telling the other agent, oh, go write me, generate me these topics. And then it actually verifies the work of that other AI. So that way you're kind of using multiple AIs who are like working in tandem and saying that where they're cross-verifying each other's work. And you also can have specific AIs, right? The AI which is generating images, AI which is generating text, like text to speech or speech to text. So you don't have to kind of basically restrict yourself with an AI. The reason why you need multiple AIs is that there's a concept of a system prompt where you're giving the AI a persona. And if you have used ChatGPT right now, the paid version, they have this thing called custom GPTs. So custom GPTs are kind of like agents, except they don't talk to other AIs. But the idea is that you tell the AI, oh, you're a marketing manager and this is what is your expectations kind of thing. And it turns out that the quality of words generated is much better than if you just say you are an AI assistant. So the prompt really matters. And this is true even for the latest model with GPT-4. Any questions on this one?
Yeah, so I'm trying to understand your solution, essentially. You mentioned this is your graph, right?
Hmm.
You should just basically enter the prompt and then constructed the graph, or what?
No, so basically we looked at the workflow, writing a blog post, and we basically built a workflow which is optimized for the AI. So like the first step I said, you enter your subject and topic, but instead of generating the blog post, we have a couple of steps where we break it up into subtopics where the user can edit it to control the generation, and then we basically create a draft blog post where the user can still change stuff, and then we say that, oh, now give me a final blog post kind of thing, and then this is all the metadata which you use for advertising the blog post. So you could do all of this with ChatGPT. You might not get the quality of generation, and you'll spend a lot of time typing prompts in a kind of thing to say, oh, give me a tweet for this thing, give me this thing. And if you go and change something, then you again have to redo and say, give me a tweet for all this thing. So the way we do it is that the workflow keeps running. So if you change something, the rest of the workflow runs. So you don't have to kind of keep this thing. So all this stuff can be done manually.
So this workflow is connected to one of those UI buttons or elements that you showed earlier? Is that how it works?
This actually comes in a separate window, and it basically has each of these elements actually has a UI widget connected to it. In this case, it's just a couple of text boxes. In this case, it's like a rich text edit control, and similar to this is like a UI control for tags to display tags and things like that. One of the nice things, like as you move on further in your AI journey, is to actually use the LLMs for what they are good at, is to generate text and understand meaningful data kind of thing, and not just LLM but also other generative AI technologies. And here, I think what we do is this example, what this is showing, is instead of just a dashboard with numbers and charts, you use AI software to analyze the data at night, right? And spot relationships and come up with a call to action and this thing. So when the user comes in the morning, they have a rich document like that, like a business report, and telling them like, oh, when we released this new version of the software, we got a lot of our support hits went up by 40%. That means there's probably a bug in this portion of the software. And the AI can see things where normal humans can't see things, because it's essentially looking at data in terms of bytes, right? And just saying that, oh, there's a difference here and there's a difference here, and it can see patterns which human beings might not be able to see. I think I was talking earlier was that the radiologists, they did a study of, they trained a model, and that's not a LLM but a different AI model, to check for cancer kind of thing. And then they found that the model performed better than radiologists to detect cancer kind of thing. And the hypothesis why it was so is that maybe on the screen the radiologists don't have the information which the bytes and the data, actual data, the numbers have that information kind of thing. So there's stuff I think which AI is good at, especially for handling a large amount of data. And the LLMs are good at basically taking that data and basically saying that how can I basically transform this into text kind of thing, which makes sense for the user kind of thing. Once you add that, I think this is a really complex endeavor. You probably want custom models to kind of understand your data kind of thing. So it's not a simple, don't start out with this, that's what I'm saying, that's your first step. This is a thing of immersive experiences. So one of the things I think if you have played an RPG game or this thing, when you're talking to a non-playable character, it really sucks after some time. It's like the guy or person just runs out of stuff to talk about, right? Because everything is, the whole dialogue is hard-coded kind of thing. And I think last year NVIDIA did a demo where this NPC, and this is a screenshot from the demo, was just created as a persona from a LLM kind of thing. NVIDIA just described like, hey, what does this person do, and who is this person? And this person was a person who owned a restaurant kind of thing, and gave him that persona with all the stuff. And when the player came and started talking to him using voice, the voice was converted into text and then fed to that LLM and told generate a response based on this person's persona. So you really had like a sort of I won't say real life, but it was a much better experience when you're dynamically generating stuff and putting out things out there. So there's no canned responses. You can just think tomorrow if you want to, for example, you want to translate this into Spanish, you just translate the person's persona and tell it respond in Spanish kind of thing. And you basically, your game is much more easier to make it multilingual kind of thing. Of course, now the model has to support Spanish or whichever language you're using, which the big models like GPT-4 and Gemini and all that do support. The stuff what you can do is like, because you're kind of almost creating that, besides game characters, you can have virtual museums, which like interactive guides. You can do language learning in context. And the last one is something called a digital twin, and I think this came from the NVIDIA CEO, Jensen, who basically is like, if you're basically doing something, you can create a virtual environment to simulate it and test it in. Like for example, if you're building a self-driving car, you can create a digital twin of that in the virtual world and test out as much as you can in the virtual world without worrying of crashing and killing people and getting permissions and stuff like that. And I think they have showed, I think in this last couple of days back, they had a big event. I think they showed a company which is one of these, I think they make the boxes, the AI boxes, how they basically set up the whole factory flow in the digital world. And once they tried different variations and optimized it, and once they were satisfied it, then they went and basically built the factory kind of thing. So it's basically trying to simulate. You can think of something like that for doctors or pilot training or something like that, where a person is kind of living in a simulation, and once a person passes the simulation, then you put them in a real jet. And the one thing I think which Apple I think is missing is, I think they are with Vision Pro, I think they need to have some more interactive experiences like that, which are dynamic. And hopefully by next year, somebody will build them one. The last thing of the multimodal UIs, with these next generation models, what you're seeing is that besides doing text to text, they can also do image to text, text to image, image to voice also, text to voice. So all those things will be available as services and all that. So if you're developing, and especially you're developing a mobile app, you can visualize integrating with those services. For example, when I call a service technician up, they will ask me like, oh, give me the model number of this appliance, the serial number, and tell me the diagnostics code. But I can easily, if I can just submit a screenshot and I don't have to wait in the line to kind of thing. The screenshot you can pass that information out, the model number, service, the serial number, the diagnostic code and stuff like that. So there are cases, I think, where by getting input for more than just text, you can develop a new class of apps where you can improve productivity of not just your customer reps, but also the people using the app. So you can, instead of making them wait on the phone like on this thing, or basically having a callback number and all, you can use AI to kind of diagnose what's happening, this thing. And also remember, AI can access a lot more data at this thing, so it can basically figure out like, other people have reported this problem, so it's probably a similar problem. It's very, if it's something like software or something like that. I think a lot of people who have used AI and they have got roadblocks, they get very frustrated with it and say that, you know what, this thing is not working out, kind of thing, and stuff like that. And that's kind of the case where the model might not be there to do what you're doing. And there's one concept, I think Daniel, I forgot his last name, wrote a book on system 2 thinking, where there are two types of thinking kind of thing. System 1 thinking is
Daniel Kahneman.
Thank you. It's just to keep you alive. It's like it takes care of the stuff which you need. You like see something, you're scared, you start running, kind of thing, without thinking. And system 2 thinking is a slower thinking, and it's used for much more complex problems. Like let's say you're solving a puzzle, or you're writing an essay, or you're creating a PowerPoint or something like that. You really have to now think deeply on how do I structure, kind of thing. A good example of a system 2 thinking is actually like a chess AI or the AlphaGo, which beat the Go player, kind of thing. And the way it works is that it actually, the way it does reasoning is it checks like the moves, right? I mean, it checks like, these are the 5 possible moves, kind of thing. Now, which move makes sense? Which is the best possible move by looking ahead in the tree, kind of thing. Like if I keep going down this path, and obviously there's a time limit because it can't traverse the entire tree, it has to come back. But that is the same concept of this thing. Now, ChatGPT doesn't do this. When you ask it to generate tokens, it'll generate you tokens. It's not going to check like, I'll generate you one set of tokens, second set of tokens, third set of tokens, and now see which is the best set of tokens and analyze and reason that this is the best tokens to give you. And which is why when people do puzzles with ChatGPT, Gemini, and stuff like that, like complex human puzzles, it sometimes gets things totally wrong, right? I mean, you all must have read articles on that kind of thing, because it's not really doing the reasoning. But the next model from a lot of these companies, and definitely from OpenAI, is something which will do system 2 thinking, which means reasoning, like thinking about and reasoning, then looking at different possibilities and saying this is the best possibility, kind of thing, at this thing. I don't know if it will be called GPT-5, but that's a marketing decision, but it is this thing. The other thing which we talk of AI agents, like you can look at like multiple AI agents, again, orchestrating different problems, kind of thing. And let's say you want to write a blog post, then you have one agent which is basically in charge of creating images, one agent which is in charge of the SEO part, one agent which is just only goal in life is to check whether this article meets my SEO considerations or not. Then one agent doing the writing, one agent is checking that it's meeting all the brand guidelines for the company, kind of thing. So the concept is that you'll have multiple of these small agents talking to each other. Now, when you think of all this takes time, right? That's the concept of system 2. So that the concept, like you cannot use the system 2 in chat. Like you need to kind of, it's like almost like a batch processing where you submit a job, or like send out an email and then wait for a response or go and do other stuff, kind of thing. So I think that's going to be a big change. Like if you want to use these complex reasoning models, they're going to take time. And that's something which you need to think about, like how do I structure my user experience for something which might take time, kind of.
Question.
Yeah.
Does that not use LLMs then?
So I think we'll have to have a cross architecture which uses part of LLM and part of a reasoning kind of thing. I think OpenAI, I think there were some leaks when that whole Sam Altman saga about Q reasoning kind of thing, which leaked out kind of thing. But pretty much they're very secretive what they do. But basically you need something what AlphaGo solved and what ChatGPT solves and has some kind of merger which can do both of those kinds of things and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure that hopefully by the end of this year they'll release a model which does that. But it's going to be expensive kind of thing because the amount of processing, like I think they are, the problem with OpenAI is they're a very secretive company, so you don't know whether the ChatGPT is a profit center for them or a loss center because the amount of Edge 100 GPUs is consuming to kind of generate all these kinds of things. We know it's a loss center for Microsoft because they're just trying to kill everybody else and beat everybody in the AI, but we don't know how much. So like small companies can only afford it if you have tons of VC money to burn and you can do all this, but after some time when the money runs out, you're stuck kind of thing. So it's better to architect stuff, trying to basically optimize things like on a side way, like we use our application uses local models because we didn't want to burn OpenAI credits kind of thing to do stuff. So and that's also good practice because if you can use a smaller model to do something, you don't want to basically send your data to a third-party company, right? So a couple of days back, I think Jensen, who's the CEO of NVIDIA, he announced that the performance for this of his new Blackwell GPUs are going to be 10 to 30 times more. But this is for data centers, but even AMD, Intel and Apple are also working on the next generation of CPUs to kind of do things faster for AI processing. And mainly when you say faster for AI processing, it is mainly making matrix multiplications work faster, which are traditionally done on GPUs kind of. From a software wise, I think we started with 64-bit floating point numbers to represent the weights. Now we are in the 8-bit and 16-bit, and there's moves to like go to 1-bit kind of thing. So they're basically trying to scale down the thing. And like if when this happens, then you'll be able to get a model like a 70 billion parameter model like Llama. You'll be able to run it on consumer hardware.
What is 1-bit quantization?
Basically, you use 1 bit to store the weight of the thing.
Oh, only 1 bit.
One bit, yeah.
In the neural model,
in the neural network, but it has to be trained for that. I think Microsoft and I think the research team in China released a white paper of 1-bit quantization.
That's the weights between the nodes in the neural network?
Yes, that's what they're trying to do. I mean, they have not, it's not been, they haven't released an actual model which does that so far. So, but that's what the paper proposes.
Is that now they're using 16 bits or 24 bits?
So you can run 16 bits. You can run floating point 8 bits. I generally run the models on my local computer at 4-bit resolution kind of thing, just because I can fit a bigger model in my GPU, which is only got 24 gigabytes kind of thing. So I'm kind of restricted by my size of the GPU kind of thing. I think this GPU has, I think it's 192 or it's much more, but these ones also don't fit the entire GPT-4 model inside the GPU. You need multiple GPUs to kind of, so it's a big software problem for, if you write an inference server, it's a big software problem to do inference at scale and do it successfully kind of thing.
Who will give you the GPT-4 LLM? I mean, some company, Google, whatever, invested, not Google, whatever, Microsoft, they invested $10 billion in it. They won't give you the LLM.
No, I'm not interested in the GPT-4 LLM. I'm interested in having an open source LLM which I can run on my desktop, which is bigger than 17.
You're not going to take the LLM that's used by GPT-4.
I don't have the resources to pay
exactly.
NVIDIA so much money to kind of build my data center kind of thing.
But there are thousands of models available open source on Hugging Face.
Yeah, but how many parameters are they
I
optimized?
mean, there's some pretty hefty ones. They're not GPT-4.
They're not GPT-4, okay.
You can make a specialized model.
Yeah, so we
It's a
use,
domain expert.
well, our app,
Okay, all right.
we use a 7 billion parameter Mistral model from a company in France.
Okay.
And that doesn't have the world knowledge of GPT. So you can't do things like, give me all the moons of Pluto, for example.
Whatever.
One want to have that
But you
information.
could have that for dermatology, for example. You
Yes,
could
but
have
it
that.
can do like summarizations and expand content and some limited translations kind of thing. So it can do some basic stuff. So depending on your use case, if you can find a smaller model to do it, you will save a lot of money and it'll be faster.
Where do you guys host it? Local, I
Huh?
mean, like replicate or?
So our Windows app hosts it locally. It uses the local, if you have a local GPU, it will use a local GPU. If you don't have a local GPU and you have 32 gigs of RAM, it'll run it on your CPU. It'll probably take about 10 seconds to give you one word, but it'll work. So,
You have a demo, I'm curious. I mean, we'll have to, maybe after the presentation.
yeah, you can go to the website and you can download it. Or I don't know if I have a demo on this machine. So my prediction is that we should have, and there are models which are close to the GPT-4 but not reaching that. But I feel that with 2026, with the work that Intel, Apple and all the AMD is putting in, and also what NVIDIA will have a better GPU by that time, we should have a GPT-4 class LLM running on by 2026. The problem is that with GPT-5 or whichever new model comes out, you might not want to use that, but that's a different issue kind of thing. One other thing before I go to slide, this picture I think was taken a couple of days back, and it always reminded me of Moses coming down with the 10 commandments, the tablets kind of thing. And that's what most people visualize Jensen as, and that's why his stock, NVIDIA stock is really up in the sky kind of thing. I think people are right, oh, if you had taken a job in 2014 and just not sold a stock there, you would be worth 10 million by now. So, any other questions before we conclude?
So I've got a Razer laptop with a TI 3040 GPU on it. Are we talking, will your model run
Yes.
something like that?
Yeah,
Or
it's
will you
probably
be trying to-
3050, I think.
Pardon?
RTX 3050 most likely.
It's either 3040 or 3080. I don't
3080.
remember.
Might be 3080.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will definitely run. The 7 billion parameter will run. And now we have have a thing where we can you can download most of the models on Hugging Face, including, if that model doesn't work, then Microsoft has a 2.8 billion parameter model called PHI-2. That will definitely work.
And is it a native Windows app or is it?
It's a native Windows app. It's on the Windows, the Microsoft
Okay.
Store kind of thing. So,
How big is that model? The 2.8 billion. How many gigabytes of memory?
I think the 2.8 is about 2.8, about 3 gigabytes.
3
in size
gigabytes.
kind of thing. The 7B model is around 5 gigabytes or something.
5 gigabytes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a little brother in high school, and I just keep telling him, learn these AI tools, that's the best advice I have for him, though, because by the time he's ready to enter the workforce, it's gonna be totally different. But, for people that are completing their computer science education right now, what is some advice you would have for them so they can have a chance to enter the workforce because it's so competitive?
I think and this is actually true even before AI, is like, especially for people coming out of college, you want to basically either get an internship where you can show your value. And if you don't get an internship, it's actually much more tougher. So you need to have some kind of like an open source or some way, like a blog or something like that, where you're showing your value to a company which is hiring. Because I'll be very blunt, most companies don't want to hire people fresh out of college because they assume that a lot of training will be required. But if you can show that I have a blog which, for example, understands AI, or there are a lot of open source AI projects on GitHub and Hugging Face. If you basically say that, hey, I have contributed to these GitHub projects kind of thing, which are in the AI space, that puts you at a dramatically different level, and people actually see you very differently that, oh, this person has taken the time and effort to actually submit some patches to an open source project, or they have maybe even trained a model which they have uploaded to Hugging Face kind of thing. So I think it's a question of not just learning the technology, but then showing the world that you know how to use the technology. And I think I've seen people even get hired out of high school because they knew the AI stuff very well. They basically had contributed to either an open source project, or they actually had their own model up on Hugging Face kind of thing. And then people are like, oh, we'll take you instead of basically training somebody else to kind of do the job.
If I can add to that, because I just hired an intern, and what made him stand out was his intense curiosity. Because if you go back 18 months, you wouldn't have told your little brother to go into AI, perhaps, right? So now look forward 5 years. Who knows, right? It could be AI. It certainly is going to be, AI is going to be assisted. But the point is, this intern we just hired had such an immense curiosity that he was tinkering and trying with everything. And that's what I want, is curiosity. The technology, it changes rapidly.
Yes.
But that attitude is the key.
Right.
And it showed on his resume because of all the things that he was trying, like the GitHub projects.
And I think that's true, like without even the technology. Like this technology, what I'm talking to you might change in another 2 years, definitely, will definitely change. Might change in another 6 months kind of thing. So I think the main thing is to kind of, when you're preparing yourself, is to kind of don't get lost in the technology kind of thing, but just focus on your core skills as a software developer and trust that you'll be able to figure stuff out. Having said that, I think one of the big barriers for people who are trying to learn AI is either the content is too fluffy, like some YouTube videos, or the content is too in-depth with like math papers and stuff like that. And to be honest, I've not found a lot of good videos and content which are targeted to software developers. So I think that's one thing. There's this guy called Karpathy, who was Andre Karpathy, who was the I think chief AI scientist for Tesla. He joined, and he was part of OpenAI, then joined Tesla, and now joined OpenAI again, and now he's trying to do something on his own. So he has got a couple of really good videos on how to build a GPT. So if you really want to get an in-depth knowledge of like how to, and you're a good programmer, you can go through his videos step by step, but not just look at his videos, but have your computer and two computers nearby. One computer is showing the video, and the other computer is you're typing the code and trying to figure out how exactly that the various steps like tokenization takes place, and the decoding takes place, and how do you get the actual tokens and things like that.
Oh, you've got more. Never mind.
Yeah.
More.
Just a couple of more slides.
One more question. If I understand correctly, the LLM for GPT-4, whatever, has basically the entire internet.
Yes.
Okay? So we're not going to have more of data going into those LLMs. So are
Yes.
do
We
we
can
reach
have
a
more.
limit? Asymptotically?
It's only text.
What?
It's only text, images,
It's only
videos.
text, exactly. It's
Yeah.
only text. Yeah, it's only text.
There's a whole bunch of videos which we can basically digitize and put in a multimodal LLM.
It's also the training.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a copy of the whole internet, it's been
Trained,
trained.
yeah.
And it may or may not, the weights and measures may not have been
Optimized.
optimized the best.
So this is training by people.
Yes, there's
Okay.
RHF, there's plenty more to be done. It's not like it's got the internet and we're done.
Yeah, but I think more than that, I think the reasoning is something which is missing. And that's what
Reasoning, of course, yes.
the Sam Altman, who's the CEO of that, he admits that. There was an interview, you guys should see the interview with Bill Gates,
Yeah.
where they talk about these things and where AI is going. And I think he does admit that reasoning is a very weak point in the current GPT-4. Good.
What are your thoughts on Devin?
It's very hard to say right now because it's not very clear whether it's just hype. But one of the things I think what they do is also have like an internal workflow.
What was the question?
Does everybody know what Devin is?
Oh, okay.
So-
So let's start from there. So Devin there was an announcement I think few days back of a AI software engineer kind of thing where it will, instead of hiring a real person, you would hire Devin for the task kind of thing and do.
And by the way, ironically,
Yeah.
the company itself is hiring software engineers. The company that put together.
Yeah.
Has anybody tried it, Devin? I mean,
No, I have not tried it. I think some people have tried it and said it kind of works sometimes, doesn't work other times kind of thing.
Just
The-
like software engineer.
That's really true. But it depends. If you are a good manager, then the software engineer actually works. So the thing is, I think there are ways to optimize the LLMs kind of thing by giving it larger context and things like that. But I think that I have a problem with that philosophy. So there are two kinds of philosophies, right? One philosophy is that we'll have these AI workers, which the VCs seem to want, like you replace your entire factory with AI workers, your entire set of information workers with information workers. And I don't believe in that philosophy. And the reason behind that is self-driving. They've been promising us self-driving for a long time. But the reason it doesn't happen is not just the technology, the liability. Like you need to have somebody intelligent where you can basically fire or blame and stuff like that. So with the AI, this thing, it'll become like a chatbot which Air Canada uses it. Like things go wrong, they are like this thing. There's no oversight of that kind of thing. So I think that AI should be used to kind of enable acceleration and improving productivity of real humans. And but real humans need to be the final decision maker, and they have to be the hook for every decision that is made kind of thing. So you can use AI to write you stuff and things like that, but then and do an automated QA check and everything like that. But at the end of the day, you should have the ability to kind of understand what's going on. I'll give you an example. My daughter, she she knows graphics better than me, and she uses Photoshop. So I've tried to design images using DALL-E and Stable Diffusion and all, and she always beats me when we compare the images. And the reason behind that is that she knows graphics better than me, kind of thing. And the same thing, like a marketing person who understands marketing will be able to use any AI much more effectively than I as a software engineer, right? If a marketing person decides, look, I'm going to write this fancy app kind of thing and starts using ChatGPT or Devin or something like that, the results will be really crappy because they don't understand what they're doing. And that's true in the real world. Like if you hire people who are just copying code from Stack Overflow or something without that understanding of what actually is happening under the hood, the stuff is going to break down at some point of time, kind of thing. So I think you need people who understand those concepts, whether it's marketing, sales, or something else, and it can accelerate their work by eliminating a lot of the busy work that they do. Like the example I gave you of a blog post. If I write a blog post on like ice hockey, I will not even know whether that blog post makes sense or not, whether people will like it or not, right? I mean, but if I'm a ice hockey fanatic kind of thing and I use that tool, I will know how to fine tune that the blog post to actually meet a real world need kind of thing. And AI will be doing the busy work of the actual writing.
So on the hockey example, could you use another AI to evaluate the blog post to see if this
You could kind of thing, yeah. You could, and that would be helpful kind of thing. But the question is now, at some point of time, I think you need a human being to evaluate and say, is this worth my time? Now, if you're a spammer who's just trying to build that SEO links to come and hit the website and all, then you don't care about it kind of thing. But otherwise, I think you really need to care about it. Yeah, good.
One thing I do when I play around with LLMs is I try to stump the chatbot, like ask it a question I know the answer to, but like a trick question. And sometimes it'll get the question wrong. But where I'm going with this is, how do you fix that?
I think at some point of time when you have those questions which are complicated, like those puzzles and all, it's not very fixable with the current model, honestly.
Let me give an example. So I'm a retired Marine. I say that there was a Marine Corps senior officer, his sergeant major. His last name was Black, but he was a white guy. And about 3 sergeant majors ago, there was a sergeant major's last name was Green, but he's a black guy. ChatGPT went crazy. It doesn't, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So the thing is, there's no way for me, like, hey, Sergeant Major Black is a white guy and Sergeant Major Green is a white guy, is a black guy. Like, there's no way, so that's where I'm just like, that's where, if you try to stump the chatbot, now that's a trick question, but I'm just like, all right, how would I correct that?
So
Ultimately, doesn't have the concept of a black guy.
Yeah, but
That's all it knows is about the correlation of words. It's showing black and guy and whatever. That's
this
what it
one
does.
is super easy to fix.
Oh,
Because you just put it in the prompt, and you can even, if you use ChatGPT, you'll have your own prompt for it, but if you write API, you can send it in the prompt. And but what you can say is that Major Black is actually Caucasian person. Major Green is a black person. Major Black was born in 2016, so you can provide all the information.
ChatGPT is scraping the internet.
no. I think what you're saying is correct. That will fix the
Right,
problem.
So
Yeah.
it's all in there. So the thing about this, it's ChatGPT has a lot of knowledge, right? But it's all very generalized. And you know what is true and not depends on who you ask, right? But if you have particular knowledge that needs to be true all the time, because you know that it's true, then you give the model that knowledge before you ask any other questions.
Right. And it's a question of supplying the context, right? Like if I search for cricket on Google, it sometimes give me that the insect cricket, right, instead of the sport cricket kind of thing. And because it doesn't have context of which cricket I'm referring to kind of thing. But the more context I give it, whether I'm giving Google search or giving the LLM model, if you give it more context, as you said, like you specify like these people are this Caucasian, black, and this thing, then it will know exactly like, then it won't get fooled. You can try that out. And then like what I said, like, I thought you were referring to a certain set of mental puzzles, which still stumps them, and that's why the reasoning part of
You
model.
still do even those,
Yeah.
but it's limited. But you can do those if you do step by step and reasoning, and you can say crickets. Whenever I say crickets, that means that, and then you give it 10 sentences.
Correct. Yeah. So
like bollocks.
Yeah.
Whenever I say bollocks, that means this, and then you say crickets, bollocks, and it does amazing things. You know?
Right.
Also offered a tip at $20 for a better answer.
You can do that.
I have still not figured why that works. I still not figure why that exactly
Well,
works.
and they have a theory for why that is, because when it's scraping the internet, the higher quality answers came from those places where people paid tips for higher, so more experts were weighing in on those types of things.
It gives more attention to that.
Yeah.
Yes.
They should have not been able to scrape those sites because they are all behind paywalls. That's a separate discussion totally. Okay, so the last thing from a conclusion standpoint kind of thing, I would like you guys to kind of take away from this is to try experimenting with new ideas, but try to start small kind of thing. If you don't try to create your custom model at the start, you just try to use AI chatbot, like deploy a chatbot internally kind of thing. Explore LLM APIs, integrate with your custom apps, and explore the custom UI. So each step is a journey in itself, and I think if you take small steps, then your chances of success are going to be much more this thing. Because as I said, the information on the internet and with the AIs, they change almost every day. It's very hard to find high quality information kind of thing, and I think Google search is actually not doing a very good job these days with the SEO mess that they have created. So that's one thing, but I think as you kind of go this thing, then I think these groups like this kind of help, where you can talk to people who have had a similar problem and find out like, hey, how did you solve this problem and what are the issues kind of thing. Because I think when you look at a YouTube video, you'll say like, oh, I did this fantastic thing, but when actually people try it, it really doesn't work in the real world kind of thing. And the last slide is, I think, first of all, I think thank you for inviting me here, Eugene. And if you want to, I'm taking questions now, but if you want to connect to me later, my email is up there, or you can connect to me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. This is a little bit about our platform. It kind of runs on Windows on the web, and it basically makes it easier to build this thing. If you go to this website, you can see more information on what it does. Thank you.